I remember it like yesterday. I had just turned onto the Mass Plain, heading west. I was driving by myself in a two-wheel drive Toyota pickup truck. I had $100 in my back pocket, and I had a roll full of quarters to call home at wherever I felt I needed to do so. I had turned west, and my destination was Vail, Colorado. I was 23 years old. The year was 1991. And, you know, if someone stands up on a stage and they're like talking about, hey, you're 23 years old and you're in this vehicle and you're on your way to Colorado and you're going to spend some time in Vail, the first thing that should come to your mind is, wow, what a great experience. You know, so young, he's going to be heading out there, he's going to be doing this kind of stuff. I wish I did that when I was younger. And I would say that most people should think that way, but that was not what I was doing. I wasn't running to something. I was running from something. See, about a year or a year and a half earlier, I graduated from college. I was in love with this girl, and I had just accepted a relatively prestigious position with General Electric. It was in their corporate leadership program. So I followed my girlfriend down to New York and took this position, thinking we're going to be a power couple. You know, she's in medical school. I'm starting out in this corporate program. The two of us are together. We're going to do this thing together. And, you know, it was like we moved in together, and this was the start of my life. This was the way things were going to go. And I had it nailed. I mean, up until this point, I had it nailed. Everything had gone right for me. Well, it wasn't long after taking my seat at General Electric, something just didn't feel right. I had always been really ambitious, kind of colored outside the lines a little bit, started my own businesses in college, and I was in this program, and I just kind of felt like I was in the military. I would go into the office, and I would sit down, and I felt like I was just getting in line, and it didn't seem like there was any real ambition. Everybody was just kind of like doing their thing, waiting to get promoted, and kind of had to check boxes, and kind of had to be politically correct, and it just wasn't rubbing me the right way. And I was feeling like this sensation I had never felt before in my life. I was starting to feel just a lot of disease. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was nervous. I didn't know what was going on. And then I had my manager pulled me aside and they said that we're losing the benefit of the doubt with you. You came here highly recommended out of WPI. There was only 40 people on this program nationwide. We put you into this office. What is wrong with you? And I was like, this is the first time in my life anybody's ever said to me, what is wrong with you? So immediately I start to panic. I start wondering what the heck's happening here. And I start getting angry. I start getting pissed off. I just start looking around saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with all of you guys? I mean, how come you guys are showing up at 8 and leaving at 5? I always showed up at 6, 11, 6. Like, nobody here seems to have any ambition or be in any rush at all to accomplish anything. It just seems like everybody's here kissing everybody else's ass. So, of course, I'm a punky little 21 or 22-year-old kid, so what do? I book an appointment with the general manager. I sit down with him and I say to myself, hey, you know what, this isn't enough for me. He's like, you kids nowadays, you want it all right now. You want it right now, you want it today. You're not patient, not my day. And of course, I took offense to that. You know what I said? I said, hey, you know what? How long have you worked for this company? It's like, I've been here 20 years. I said, what do you make? Wrong thing. I'm going to ask. And he told me what he made. And I said, you know what? If you think I'm going to be sitting here for 20 years to sit behind that desk and make that kind of money, not going to happen. So I resigned right then and right there. I had absolutely no plan, but I thought my life up until this point, I had such a degree of success that, no matter what would happen, I would make it. Well, I had no plan, I had no capital, and I had no clue about myself. And this is where things start to fall apart. In relatively short order, it was made clear to me as I went back out into the workforce that I had just gone and worked for General Electric and quit, and I had absolutely no good reason to tell anybody why I did it, other than the fact that it wasn't ambitious enough for me. We were also in the middle of a recession. So what ended up happening was I ended up spending my days at the computer lab, this is back when we were still working off of mainframes in 1991, printing resumes, sending them out to any organization that gave me offers prior. And they all said, no, we're not interested. And I was working at night, I had no money. So in order to support myself and pay the rent, I ended up getting a security job at night. So I'm wearing a security uniform and I'm working in a psychiatric ward on the night shift. I start falling apart. Nobody wants me anymore. I'm working at night in a psych ward, I'm running out of money. My parents don't understand me. They're very upset that I just ditched this great opportunity. So I start getting depressed. I didn't even know what depression was, but I started withdrawing. I started sleeping in. I couldn't eat. I was pacing around my apartment, but I still had no idea what was going on with me. Then this woman that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with decides that I'm not a good deal for her anymore, and she moves out and breaks up with me. So at that point, I basically just did the best I could. I hung in there as long as I could, and I ended up one day in October 1991 in my pickup truck with everything I owned in the back, just heading west, running away from this mess that I've created for myself. You see, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. This wasn't the way I was trained. You see, I was raised in a household where perfection was required. Everything that I did had to be perfect. It was work, it was studying, working, sleeping, eating, and sports, and that was it. And everything had to be done. Everything had to be done perfectly. Let me just give you an example of what it was like. One of my first earliest memories was at 5 years old. My mother said, you need to learn how to tie your shoes. It was a beautiful day, and I remember it, and I remember that room, I remember the home, and I remember that I was at least 5, but maybe 4. And she said, you need to learn how to tie your shoes. And I said, hey, Dad wears these shoes that don't have any laces, maybe I'll just do what Dad does. So what did my mother do? She put me in a room, she locked the door, and she said, you're not coming out to learn how to tie your shoes. And I'm looking out the window and all my friends playing, and here I am at 5 years old being basically forced to do this. And you're not allowed out until you get it done. That basically set the tone for the next 18 or 13 years while I was in that household. What does that create in a person? What does that turn a person into? Well, I'll tell you what it turns a person into. You end up doing things that the world seems to really get a lot of recognition for certain things. Academics, I was told, was you need to be the absolute best or you're not going to make it. So I ended up being class valedictorian. In sports, I was told you need to be captain of the team, you need to, you basically have to bring your team to the championship, you need to basically be exceptional in athletics. So I was the captain of the basketball team, and I was first team academic all-state in basketball. That happened. President of the National Honor Society also happened. I mean, for Pete's sakes, I was even on the math team, and I gotta tell you, ladies, introducing yourself as a mathlete, okay, it's an aphrodisiac to 16, 17-year-old women. Nerds are the best now. No, you're not that bad. So that's what I ended up turning into. And what also ended up happening was that through that, I had all these incredible opportunities. So I was getting all this validation through academics, all of this validation, but really no validation at home. Everything was outside. Everything was from teachers. Everything was from universities. For example, I ended up applying and getting into West Point. Harvard, I ended up, one day I get this note that I won the Harvard Book Award, which was an award that Harvard gives out to, a couple hundred students around the world. It's basically an advertisement saying, we would like for you to come to Harvard. Quite an honor. I was just like, I'm getting all this validation,
But at the end of the day, I'm just this very vulnerable kid that's just done nothing but achieve for 14 or 15 years. So I end up going to engineering school. I go through 4 years of engineering school. I do fairly well there. I go back into my academic mode. I end up graduating early. I get a number of offers. Life is still great. I choose this offer. I go to New York. It happens, what I shared with you happened earlier. I end up, after about a year and a half, completely lost. I'm driving out to Vail, Colorado, and for 2 years, I'm driving around some of the wealthiest people on private charters back and forth to the airport twice a day. I'm driving 400 miles a day, 6 days a week, 13 hours a day, in some of the worst weather imaginable. And I'm sitting with people that are ruling the world. I'm basically taking people that are coming out of Manhattan, all of these corporations, and here I am, this completely lost kid, right, that used to be an achiever, that feels like he needs to be part of this group, but is not part of this group. I've got a uniform on and I'm driving them around. That goes on for 2 years. I finally make it out of there. I make it back into the real world. I try to get a job in the real world, and everyone's like, what have you done? Well, I just drove vans for 2 years, and I quit my first job after 6 months. So still nobody wanted to hire me. So at one point, the only job I thought I had available to me was door-to-door sales, copier sales. That was pretty much it. My recruiter said, that's all you have. You have nothing. You're valueless you're valueless. You can't market you. So you have to start at the bottom. So I ended up in this piano shop on Cabot Street in Beverly with a phone in front of me. And my job basically was to buy and sell computer products. And the job was, hey, you know what? You got 90 days to make the company $30,000, if not, you're fired. So, for the next 20 years, all I did was go through a cycle of 100% of myself into my career, completely and utterly burn out, fall into some sort of deep depression, go to the bottom, lose everything, start over, do it again. I did 3 to 4 cycles of that over a period of 20 years. During this period, I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know, I thought at one point that I was mentally ill. I had people telling me that I had manic depression, I was on medication, I was, I had gastrointestinal issues, people were taking blood, it seemed like every month or so, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Mood disorder was one thing that I was diagnosed with. I thought I was broken. I literally thought I was broken. That here I am manically trying to achieve all of these things and then completely crashing and burning. I mean, I had 3 cycles of that, and I got to tell you, that'll do a job on you. During that period of time, I started just compulsively looking for answers. I went from therapist to therapist. I would sit in libraries and just sit in the self-help section and just do whatever I could to try to figure out what was wrong with me. For Pete's sakes, at one point, I did transcendental meditation. I remember going to a center where I had to bring an orange and a feather and learn a mantra. At one point, I was convinced to go see an angel reader. So I walked into a room. For those who know me, to walk into a room where someone was telling me that they were bringing angels into the room and she was throwing, glitter on me while, she was playing this music and telling me that the answers would be coming to me. That's how desperate I got. It sounds funny now, but I was willing to really try anything. And part of what I discovered through this process of reading was that I discovered this woman, Dr. Loretta Bruning. And of all the stuff, the Anthony Robbins stuff, and the Believe in Yourself books, and the You're Not Broken books, what really stuck with me during this, what really kind of captured my attention with Dr. Bruning was that Dr. Bruning was a scientist, and she studied mammals. And what she was most interested in is mammal behavior. And also the mammalian brain, and our brain, and really how our brain works, and what makes us happy, and what makes us unhappy.
I was fascinated with that because finally I came across somebody that has some sort of science behind maybe helping me figure out what's wrong with me. And what I figured out after reading books from Dr. Bruning was that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me at all. I was just simply a mammal seeking status. And whenever I was in a position where I was failing or losing status, or I had some sort of status frustration, I would just feel lousy. But whenever I was achieving status, I was feeling great. And it was very simple to realize that, you know, the way she described it was, the way she talked about it was simply this. There's, you know, our brain has three parts to it. You have the brain stem, which is what we inherited from reptiles. That goes back 250 million years. Then you have something that sits on top of it called the limbic system that I'm going to refer to as the mammalian brain. Then you have the cortex, which is what most people think about when they think about brains, and that's about 75% of the brain matter. What Dr. Bruning really drew my attention to was the limbic system, the mammalian brain, what it does, what it has been doing for 150 million years, what it does for all of us, why we're here because of this brain, and what it controls. So, very simply, the limbic system does nothing for you other than reward you for survival behavior and penalize you for behavior that moves you away from your survival. That's all it's doing. It gives you doses of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and it meters those things out and it just meters that stuff out when it recognizes that you're behaving in a way that's going to improve your status. And to the mammalian brain, all the mammalian brain cares about is reproduction. That's it. It doesn't care about how you're feeling. It doesn't care about how you're feeling. It doesn't care about what popular culture thinks is right or wrong, or what's cool nowadays or what's not cool nowadays. It's only thinking about survival. And it's only rewarding you with the feeling of happiness when you are moving up in whatever you personally value. Okay? So, terms like status, hierarchies, dominance, alpha, these are like curse words in today's society. You can't use them. They don't particularly fit in well. Why don't they fit in well? Because they imply that somebody is better than you. And in today's society, in general, that's kind of that's just not politically correct. But the mammalian brain doesn't care about that. It wants to be better than others. It wants dominance. I mean, serotonin, you get dosed with serotonin when it recognizes that you have dominated another mammal. You think to yourself, oh my God, what is he talking about? It's not about dominating other mammals. What is this, right? And you say to yourself, well, okay, if this is who we are, then how come we're not out just, physically abusing people and doing what we have this cortex? And what the cortex is doing is it's interpreting what the mammalian brain is saying, what the mammalian brain is sending information around. I mean, the cortex is it's where we get our learning from, our abstract thought, our speech, our ability to interpret the environment, understand the feedback from the environment, seek and understand patterns. I mean, it's a magnificent tool, it's a magnificent weapon as a human being. I mean, we're the only ones that have this massive cortex. All other mammals have cortexes, but they get smaller and smaller relative to the brain. Ours is the largest relative to any mammal. But this cortex can't make you happy, and it can't make you unhappy. It just interprets. What's really running the show is the limbic system. So, that really, what I know now, if I had known then that all I was doing was attempting to achieve higher status in areas that I valued, and then when I failed or something occurred that set me back, it wasn't me, I wasn't broken, I shouldn't feel ashamed of myself. That was simply my mammalian brain dosing me with cortisol, saying, hey, you know what? You're losing status. I want to make you uncomfortable. I want to make you not feel good. So you go up, take some more risks, and move yourself back up in the hierarchy and have higher status. Because all your mammalian brain thinks about is reproduction. So they're thinking there's no way you're going to reproduce with a higher status mate if you are not high status. That's what it wants you to do. So it's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make you anxious. It's going to make you depressed. It's going to force you to take more risks and to move up. That's what it wants to do. Knowing that now, I mean, I feel like I look back over my life and said, I could have had more peace if I realized that that's really what was going on. So I want to talk a little bit about, when it comes down to status, mammals in general, outside of human beings, mammals really only have two status interests: dominance, physical dominance, and social dominance. Those are the only two. Just think about chimpanzees or any mammal that's walking the earth in terms of when you watch them on the Nature Channel. They're fighting, right? They might be in a herd, or they're reproducing, or they're eating. That's all they're doing. At the end of the day, that's what the mammalian brain wants you to do. I mean, it's basically the 3 Fs. It wants you to feed, fight, and, reproduce. But humans have 11 additional status categories, and what I'd like to submit to you, and I'd like you to think about this when I move through them, what resonates with you. Okay, so I'm just going to read this off, because I haven't committed these to memory. Money. Financial well-being. That's a very common high status trait in human beings, specifically in the United States. Basically, it's respect for your lifestyle, freedom from being dominated by others, career, your title, your position, social life, building high status alliances, culture. You ever been to a highbrow art show where somebody's showing off their, unique art? There's a lot of status in that. Politics. Does that resonate at all? And then think, okay, well, maybe it's money, maybe it's fame, maybe it's looks, maybe it's strength. How do you feel when any of these categories gets compromised? If money or your career, say career, is important to you, well, what happens if you get demoted? How do you feel about that? You lose your job. If that is really one of the categories that you hold in high regard, that people respect you for. So mammals, strength, power, dominance, social dominance, physical dominance. Human beings, we have engineered all of these other ways for status. Now, I talked a little bit about unhappy chemicals, status threats, cortisol. A status threat is simply this. If you're a mammal and you're comfortable and you're always looking, mammals are always, your limbic system is always looking for status threats. It's always looking for someone who's going to take away your status or lower your status. So say I'll give an example here from the gym. So let's just pretend that I'm upstairs and I'm on the 3rd floor and I'm working out, right? And in my view, and I personally hold myself in high regard with regards to, say, my fitness or my strength or whatever that might be. Let's just say general in that category. And I'm out there and I'm hanging out and I've got my buddies. There's men and there's women around, and I'm getting a lot of attention for what I'm doing. And then JT shows up. And he walks out on the next platform over, and I'm looking over at him. He's like better looking, he's stronger, he's fitter, he's more skilled, and I don't understand why I feel this. I like JT, he's a friend of mine, but there's some sneaking thing going on. I'm feeling some bit of cortisol. I'm a little anxious, because guess what? I'm losing status. I'm not getting the respect and the attention that I just was getting. So, that's the example of a status threat. Thanks, JT, for allowing me to do that. I might even get you a t-shirt that says status threat.
A lot of people would be like, I think I want to get those. That'd be a great t-shirt brand, actually. Yeah. And let's move on to this next subject, which I like to call status frustration. I like to call it, Dr. Green calls it status frustration, and what happens. So think about the areas that were important to you with regards to status, and let's just say, for example, that a number of them aren't working out as well as you had hoped. You're not getting the respect from the world that you expect. Things aren't coming back to you the way that you feel that should be coming back to you. You're not earning as much money as you really feel like you deserve to earn. Despite the fact that you're trying to work on your diet and you're trying to work in the gym, you're looking in the mirror and you're not happy with it. Let's just say that, you know, your career is stuck and you're not going anywhere and you're kind of feeling like, I feel status frustration. Status frustration, again, it's just cortisol pumping into your system. It's potentially could make you depressed if you stay in that long enough. So what happens with people that have status frustration over long periods of time? I'll tell you what happens, because it happened to me and it'll happen to any of you. Guess what you start doing? You start blaming. You start going out into society. You start basically feeling like or acting like you're a victim. It is society's fault. It's our culture's fault. It's the government's fault. You know, it's the billionaire's fault. It's everyone else's fault but mine, because I am so uncomfortable right now, and I am trying so hard in all these areas that mean to me, that mean something to me, and I'm not getting back what I deserve. So guess what? There's nothing wrong with me. It's wrong out there. And that's when you get really stuck, because all of your energy is going out to something that you have absolutely no control over. And that's an example of status frustration. And I think it's common, and I felt it. When I was I'll tell you what, I was in the hole, really struggling. I thought the elderly were the enemy. Do you remember that? Yeah, I did. I was going through I was looking at like, oh geez, look at how much we spend on Medicare, and all my tax dollars are going to this. And, you know, these people, look at them, they get 50-cent coffees, and they drive slow, and it costs $400,000 in the last 10 days of their life to keep them alive. And here I am working my ass off, and I mean, they're the enemy. And I would walk around telling you, remember how when we first met, I was like, yeah, they're the enemy. I was doing that. I was very frustrated. Yeah. So, look at me, I still get wound up over it. I think there's still a little bit left in there. But if you spend enough time, I spent 20 years doing this, if you spend enough time in a place where basically you're drowning in cortisol and you're depressed, you're going to start to do whatever you can to engineer your own happy chemicals. All right? And you're going to start doing things, and it's going to start being a habit. And one of my favorite quotes is, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. I'll repeat that again. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. It happens a little at a time. And when I talk about engineering your own dopamine, what I'm talking about is doing things like this. If you take a shot of tequila, bang, you get yourself a nice little shot of dopamine. If you gamble, you're gonna dopamine up. You can get it from, sex addiction. You can get it from cutting yourself. Actually, cutting yourself is more endorphins, because you're experiencing pain, and endorphins will come in from your limbic system and produce a certain degree of euphoria. So when people do that, they're looking for euphoria. That's really what they're doing. And I did that. I did that for 20 years. And what ended up happening was that I completely and utterly lost myself over time. I started drinking. I was gambling. I was driving 2.5 hours to Foxwoods to gamble for 8 hours and driving 2.5 hours home. Remember that? Yeah. I was drinking every night. My drink of choice was vodka. And I would sit there with vodka and soda and pay no attention to my wife at all, ignore her, and just play online poker. That's it. I was just totally consumed by it. So you spend enough time doing this, and all of a sudden now you're engineering your own happy chemicals, and you get addicted to it. You have this habit of doing it because it's so easy. You don't have to do what your limbic system wants you to do, which is go out and take risks anymore and climb back into the game. You can just get a cheap shot of it. And next thing you know, you've completely changed into a different person, and I had too. I lost all self-respect. My behavior was abysmal. My relationships were awful. I was socializing with just low-character people. And physically and psychologically, I was bankrupt. Financially bankrupt. And physically, I turned into something that's unrecognized. Some of you have seen some of my before photos that I put up there. That's how I got there. I got there because I basically I was chasing dopamine hits for 20 years because I just couldn't figure out a way to get myself together again. So I was in Las Vegas. Anybody want to hear a Las Vegas story? All right. For those who know me, I've referenced Las Vegas a number of times. But this final time I went to Las Vegas, I 4 days straight entertaining customers. I probably slept about 4 hours the entire time. We're talking alcohol, cocaine. I mean, it was like a full-blown access to the meat. Yeah. I mean, it was a hell of a time. But I'll tell you this: it all came to an end. I woke up in the morning. I was about ready to get on the flight. I was in my hotel room, and I'm looking. There's mirrors on the walls. Don't ask me why I had a room with mirrors on the walls, but. So I look over in the mirror, and I'm bending over tying my shoes, and I see this really overweight, bloated, pasty, kind of really unhealthy human being. And I saw him in the mirror, and I was just like, sometimes it just takes that. I had a bunch of people telling me that I was a mess, but sometimes it just takes that visual. So I got on an airplane, and I sat down, and I wrote a manifesto. And I said, this is the day I'm going to change my life. This is the day I'm going to change my habits. And, I got off the airplane. The next day I went and walked into a CrossFit gym. I changed my community. I started changing my habits. It was really, really difficult to do. I mean, Joe Gutierrez in the front row there, he remembers me when I first showed up at the gym. I think at one point, Joe, you referred to me as a soft, middle-aged executive? Yeah. Which I was. Actually, he could have been more colorful, and I would have agreed with it as well. I mean, I couldn't do a pull-up, I couldn't do a bear crawl for 15 yards. I was, but I was able to change my habits. But I was able to incrementally, a little at a time, I was able to build new muscle around, again, using my limbic system to raise my status by building self-respect, going from being really a quitter, somebody who quit on himself, somebody who lost all self-respect, to somebody who could if I could just go to the gym that day and just do it and do it all, and then come home and just do it again tomorrow. I started building these little blocks of, habits. And, before I know it, I started moving through the CrossFit system. I got into my first competition. I voluntarily, at one point, went to California to do a mini, buzz. The Navy SEALs, one of the Navy SEALs, ex-Navy SEALs created a company for corporate executives where you could basically go out and, if you wanted to see what it's like to go through what Navy SEALs go through in BUDS, we'll do it for you. So I went to a 27-hour, non-stop psychological and physical beatdown, right? But you know what? I came out of that with respect. I was bathing in serotonin. I was really starting to re-engineer myself around these chemicals and move myself out. In 2014, I decided to take it to another level. I said, listen, I'm going to take alcohol off for the whole year. And I went 365 days without it. So, I was down in it. I mean, Rhonda's in the front row. Rhonda's nodding her head this whole time. To this day, I've had 2 women leave me. I forgot to actually talk about how my wife left me in the middle of this. But not my wife, my former ex-wife. And, to this day, I still don't know why you had every reason to leave. I think I was trying to make you leave. I mean, I hated myself to such a degree that I was behaving awfully. So, every reason to leave. I'm getting to the end of the talk. Started the talk. The talk was titled Self-Awareness. Talked a little bit about happiness, talked a little bit about unhappiness, talked a little bit about unhappy chemicals, the limbic system. We're all mammals. We all should just accept that. We should use it, understand it, try not to deny it, try not to basically subscribe to the fact that we're just these evolved human beings with these amazing cortexes, and we should be able to operate benignly in this world and treat everybody the same, and we should be the same as everybody else. What we should come to appreciate is that we are status and dominance-seeking mammals that have this cortex that acts as a governor that keeps us from doing horrific things, that keeps us from, that allows us to operate socially with others and create the things that we create together as a herd, as a group. But without your mammalian brain, you wouldn't be here today. Without your survival instincts, without these chemicals that you're being dosed with from time to time, you wouldn't be here today. You have the same chemicals moving around in your system that were operating 150 million years ago. These are the same chemicals that are working inside of mice, dogs, donkeys, right? Alpacas. We all have them. It's the same stuff. It's the same system. And it's how we survive. And I think we need to honor that. So yeah, this is a self-awareness talk. But my last component of this is really what we all want. And I think what we all want is we just want peace. Fair to say. So how do we achieve that? The first thing you need to do, when I say you need to do, I'm going to submit this. You don't need to do anything. But I suggest that you take a really hard look at yourself. You become brutally honest with yourself. You don't have to be in the position that I was in to do something about improving the quality of your life. But I submit to you that there are habits that you have right now that you're aware of, that you know that if you were to replace that habit with a more constructive habit, the quality of your life would improve over time. Does anybody disagree with that? Hard to disagree with that. This next part is a little bit more difficult. I would recommend that if you're feeling like you're at a place in your life right now where the quality of life is not where you're at, you're experiencing some status frustration, you're swimming in cortisol more often than you would prefer to kind of feel that neurochemical, well, I would start with habits and I would start small. Pick something, anything that you know is not in your best interest, and just try to replace it with something else. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just pick one thing. All right? And when you build a little mental muscle around that, then pick another thing and keep moving yourself up. All right? Once you get really good at that, what I suggest is you take an even harder look at yourself. I think I like the saying, go into your darkness before your darkness shows up on you. Or no, it's something along those lines. But something about darkness and visiting the darkness. I wish I had that. Otherwise, that would have been more powerful, but I didn't.
We get it, though.
Yeah. It's voluntarily going to places that you're avoiding. All right? Habits, what are you doing that doesn't make sense for you that you know if you changed, right? Avoiding, that's the harder part. It's way harder on the stuff you're avoiding, because the stuff you're avoiding, it's the stuff you're afraid of. It's the things you're not doing. It's the hard conversation that you need to have with someone that you're not having because you're afraid of the consequences. It's that part of you that when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're staring at the ceiling, you know it's something, you're aware of it, and you're protecting it with your life. You are terrified about going there. You're ashamed of what will happen, if you bring it to light. You might be saying to yourself, what the hell is this guy talking about? Is this guy a sociopath or something? But no, it's, for me, I just go first there. At the end of the day is that I had lost all self-respect and I quit myself. Why? I just gave up. I became a quitter. That's hard to admit. That's where I was at. I think all of us have a place inside of us that we don't want to admit is true. We're keeping some part of our truth buried way down. Why are we doing that? Because we're terrified of it. We have a persona. We have multiple personas we show the world. We have our families, our husbands, our wives, our kids, our work, our whole world. What would happen if I actually was honest with myself about this thing? And I brought it out there.
what would happen? We don't do it because we're terrified of it. There's something I think we all have. And I think working on your habits, super healthy. Going here, now that's where you're going to find your salvation. That's where you find